coaching people for 12 or 13 years now, and have mostly work these days with other coaches and consultants and therapists, but also entrepreneurs, CEOs, regular people, moms who are transitioning into the workforce again. I love what I do because it's a mix of life coaching and healing work, a lot of getting rid of the programming that we picked up as children. So most of us, were born into a family that was not perfect. And so we came in as this like wide open sponge, taking in everything. Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about how during the first 7 years of life, we're actually in theta state, which is the state of hypnosis. We take in everything around us from our parents and our siblings and our friends in school and institution, media as truth. And that becomes the programming that runs our lives. So I'm really fortunate that I get to work with people to dissolve that programming and whatever doesn't serve them. And so that they can have more freedom and more choice and be more authentic. So, which is the segue into our topic today, which is authentic decision-making. So let me share my screen and show you. Well, let me find what I want to show you. Goodness. All right, here we go. Play. Oh my goodness, all my Zoom stuff is in the way. Sorry. Forgive me for the minor technical difficulty. Here we go. All right. Can everybody see that okay? It's very quiet.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to talk about how to feel your way forward to a life you love. Now, I am a recovering intellectual, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this. I went to Cornell. I was very much taught to think my way through things, analyze everything, and this is not about that. So, humans are really good at making things complicated. I never cease to be amazed at how complicated the people I work with are able to make things. And we get rewarded for that. Nobody gets trophies and Nobel Prizes for turning in a one-sentence paper. We're taught to really think it through and explain all of the things that we went through, and that doesn't always really serve us. In fact, we get tangled up in knots a lot in our heads. So what if every decision could really be this easy? Well, the short answer is it can. Let's take a minute and do a little bit of popcorn and share some of the ways that people are currently making decisions. I know a lot of people like to make lists of pros and cons. Some of you may have gone through some values training where you do values-based decision-making. So let me stop sharing for a moment and see what people have to say, how they're currently going about this. Let's see if that worked. And we're still sharing. All right. Can we do popcorn? Can we take everybody off mute for a second, or you can unmute yourselves and just tell me, what are you doing right now to make decisions?
Yeah, pros and cons analysis sounds familiar.
Second opinions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Getting other people's feedback.
Rankings, right? It's my number one priority, number two, etc.
Great.
Sometimes I make decisions based on the path of least resistance.
Sleeping on it.
Yeah, I'm one of those people too. I'm not an impulse decision maker usually.
Cost benefit.
Interesting. Good.
It's interesting to look not only at what drives you or what appeals to you, but also what puts you off or what's a deal breaker, and focus on the negatives as well as positives. And kind of, I was taught this technique early on that if you're having a hard time coming up with the list of key benefits or what you're looking for, look at the negatives and what would be the exact opposite of that? And so I sometimes play with that technique as well.
That's a great technique. Thank you so much for sharing that. Cool.
Listen to my heart. This is Tina.
Yay, Tina. Tina's my people, I can tell. Well, that's a perfect segue. Let's go back into sharing. And, all right. Oh, really? There we go. Sorry, folks. So, one of the problems that we run into when we're making decisions is that each of us individually has a limited perspective, right? Most of the time, we only know what other people are telling us. If we're looking at a job, for example, which seems rather pertinent here, we know what the company's website says, we know what the job description says, we know what the person interviewing us says, but that's obviously only a small piece of the puzzle. We don't know how we're going to fit into the culture. We don't know what the other people are going to be like. We often only have a small piece of the pie, a small piece of the puzzle when we're trying to make our decisions. Same thing when we're dating or parenting. You know, we know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know. So also, we all see the world through filters. So I mentioned all that programming that happens when we're kids. The interesting thing about our subconscious is that it's set up to always make us right. So this explains why, for example, if there's some sort of crime and there are 5 eyewitnesses, you're going to get 5 different descriptions of what happened, because we all see the world through the filters of our past experience and our belief systems. And so somebody can be very kind to us, and if I have the childhood wound of feeling disrespected, they may say something genuinely kind and I may hear it as being disrespectful. So that really affects our ability to make decisions for obvious reasons. We only see what we see. But have any of you ever walked into a room and just known that the people in there were arguing before you walked in? Or you just like something really feels off about a space? We all have this innate ability to sense what's going on around us. You know, we talk about it as a sixth sense, and it really is totally innate to us. We know when somebody is smiling but not happy. So some of it is picking up on visual cues, some of it is picking up on body language, but we definitely have this ability to see and feel beyond what is being consciously presented to us. So the really cool thing is our mind has all these filters. Our eyes literally only show us part of what we're seeing visually. They eliminate a lot of the data that's coming in because it's overwhelming. But our body doesn't lie. Our body is the one part of us that does not have filters, that will sense when something is off. And we actually have tons of expressions in our language that can help us decode what our body is telling us. So for example, I might say, she's a real pain in the neck. And I literally might get a pain in my neck every time I think about her, or every time she stays over at my house for 3 days, if she's a family member visiting. So let's do a little bit more popcorn and hear what other people have to say. What other expressions do you know that talk about, for example, that just gave me goosebumps. For me, goosebumps are a profound yes. What other kind of expressions do people remember?
Getting chills.
Yeah.
I guess that's goosebumps too.
Well, they're different and similar for sure. For me, they're the same kind of message. What about the hair on the back of your neck standing up?
Yeah.
Headache.
What about a punch in the gut?
Oh yeah.
Pins and needles.
Mm-hmm. Anybody get butterflies in their stomach when something's exciting? Anybody ever feel like something's breaking your heart or weighing heavy on your heart? How about things that you can't stomach or that literally give you knots in your stomach? All right. Oh, anybody feel like they've been stabbed in the back? Not my favorite one. So these are all clues to what's going on. So they give us a read of the room, they give us a read of other people. Actually, let me go back there for a sec. And they really help us understand beyond the regular five senses what's happening. So your body is going to be giving you messages all the time. If you're sitting in a job interview or if you're on a date and the hair on the back of your neck is standing up, you know, watch out, there's a lot going on that I'm not seeing here. And sometimes it's a message that isn't that, you know, this person I'm talking to is evil. It's just not a match for me. It's as simple as no, thank you. It doesn't have to be a big, hairy deal. So a lot of this is innate, which is why in the description we were saying this is remembering how to do what you do naturally. If you've fed a toddler lately or a baby, you know that if something goes in their mouth that they don't like, it comes right back out again. And I literally was working with a client about 2 weeks ago who was saying that she has the same reflex. She's in her mid-20s and she has profound physical allergies to some foods. And she had bought something new that she hadn't read every ingredient on the label. And she took one bite of it and it literally came right back out of her mouth. And it turned out that it contained something that would give her anaphylactic shock. So she started getting hives just from that little bit of time that it was in her mouth. So her body knew, her body literally ejected this thing. But on a more decision-making level, you know, we know when something feels yummy and when it feels yucky. And I know those are little kid words, but believe me, I find these so helpful when I'm making choices. We know what feels delicious and we know what feels, I would rather go to the dentist than do that. Also, light and heavy are really easy to sense in the body. So sometimes I'll think about something, you know, maybe working with a marketing person or making a change to my website, and all of a sudden it'll just feel so heavy, like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. There's another good one, by the way. Or it'll feel lighter, like, oh, wow, okay, like somebody just took the weight of the world off my shoulders. Expanding and contracting is another really good body one that we can tune into when we're feeling into something. And I use that phrase a lot, feeling into things, because I used to mentally work on making decisions all the time. And the minute I got out of my head and dropped more into my body, so let me take a moment and just pause there. So a lot of us have been so entrained to be heady, to think things through, that we're literally viewing our body as a to move our head around. So our body is this great thing that can move our brain from place to place. But let me tell you, it's so much more valuable than that and so helpful when we drop out from between our ears and come into tuning into what our heart says, tuning into what our gut says, listening to all these messages. So one of the things that I find really helpful is that sense of expansion, like, oh, I'm in my Wonder Woman pose now. This feels really big and broad and yay. Or, wow, that really made me contract. That made me want to crawl into the fetal position. And there are some decisions that when we contemplate them, we literally want to curl up into the fetal position. We want to crawl back into bed and pull the covers over our head. And that's an important clue, right? So I talk about feeling your way forward, and I just wanted to share a story of this in relation to business and work. A few years ago, I was looking at launching a bottled water company. And a friend of mine owns a bottled water company in Connecticut. And as you would imagine, or maybe not, water is very regional. We don't pay a lot for it, and it's very heavy, so you don't want to ship it long distances. So he gave me the numbers for his business because I wasn't going to be in competition with him. So I knew what the pricing was, I knew what the margins were, you know, I knew the cost of goods, I knew a lot of the good financial stuff. But at that point, this was before I had partnered in a business that brought consumer products into the major retailers. So I didn't really understand the distribution part of the water sales business. And the water company that I wanted to start was called Bottled Kindness, by the way. So every water was going to have a different energy. You could give somebody a bottle of water that was courage, that would have an image on it that would evoke that sense of courage. And Dr. Masaru Emoto in Japan has done all this amazing work around water and words and intention. And he's taken these beautiful images of the crystals within water and how it changes based on the energy. So if you put love on the water, it creates these beautiful harmonious patterns. If you put hate or you're stupid, it creates these really jagged patterns. So based on that, I was going to offer this water to people, you know, courage and kindness and love and joy. And So I knew that I wanted to distribute this water through Whole Foods because that seemed like the most logical way to get this water out into the world. The most resonant audience, Mothers locally would be a really good chain. Sprouts would be a good chain. So anyway, I was trying to figure out how to make that happen when one day I was sitting at home and I decided that I wanted to go out for a glass of wine and an appetizer. And so I literally did this decision-making thing about where to go. I mean, you can use this for the most basic things in your life. And let me show you why you might want to. So I felt into this first restaurant. I was thinking, oh, do I want to go to Salt Creek Grill? For those of you who know Salt Creek. And I didn't feel anything. It was just nah. And then I felt into another restaurant. I think it was Brio. And I was like, no, not that. And then I felt into the wine cellar. Is that what it's called? The winery in Tustin. And I got this huge rush of yes, that felt really good. Like it felt like excitement and yes. So I went to the winery in Tustin. And I walked in and there was one seat open at the bar, and I like it when it's really that obvious, no decision to be made. I went and sat at the seat at the bar, started chatting with the people next to me, having a really lovely time. And then all of a sudden the maitre d' came over to these two people next to me and said, hey, you know, we didn't expect to have an opening, but your table is ready. And we were all kind of sad because we were having fun playing, and then they went. So off they went. There's two seats next to me open and all these people waiting to sit down. So this couple sits down next to me. They're married, and I'm like, oh, they're not going to talk to me. And there was nobody on the other side. So I was kind of sad, sitting there for a moment. But then sure enough, the woman started talking to me and asking me questions. And we're talking about wine, and we're talking about food, and we're talking about travel and the things you talk about when you sit in a nice restaurant. And they started asking me what I'm doing. And I tell them about this bottled water business. And they ask me these really good questions. Like she's asking me questions and he's asking me questions. And finally, after about 20 minutes of talking about this business, the man tells me that he is the regional president of Whole Foods Markets. And he tells me which region to launch in and how to roll out the product nationwide if it does well in the first region. And I know I don't have to tell you that there is no way I could have gotten an hour meeting with this man through normal business channels. Like there's just no reason on earth that he would spend time talking to me. But because I followed the energy, because I used this intuitive decision-making or authentic decision-making process, I wound up in the right place at the right time to learn literally everything I needed to know to decide about this business. So other great clues that can help you when you're making decisions are that feeling of relief. So much of the time, we're all wound up trying to figure it out. And the minute I focus on something that is a yes for me, it feels like such a huge rush of relief. The other thing that's really easy to feel when you start doing this is, oh no. So just notice when that starts to happen. If you're talking to somebody who's making a decision, it's really easy to see when their eyes light up, like that thing that really sparks them. Or for me, sometimes the room seems brighter or clearer. Or one time I was wondering who to speak to when I was standing at a networking event, and I turned around and the entire room was black and white and one person was in color. So I was like, okay, I think I'll go talk to that person. So it can be that obvious. There's also that sinking feeling. Have you ever thought about something and you just feel like your stomach dropped? It's like, oh no. Again, the oh no. One thing I notice a lot when I'm talking to clients is that all of a sudden they start clearing their throat and it's like they got choked up. So generally speaking, I find when people have that sort of throat clearing, it's related to not speaking your truth, not feeling safe to say what you need to say. Now, if you're making a decision about whether or not to work with a potential client, to go work at a potential job, that throat choking up is really important to pay attention to. Likewise, the belly. So sometimes there's that butterflies thing that's good or excitement. Sometimes there's that knot in the stomach. That tends to be one of my no symbols. So I always try and keep some attention to what's going on in my belly when I'm making choices around things. Now, have any of you ever used the word should? Like, I really should do this? I'm going to go with yeah, probably. We have a tendency to should on ourselves a lot. And especially when we're making choices related to what's going to care for our family or what's going to pay the mortgage. You know, I should get this kind of job. I should make this amount of money. There's a lot of supposed to going on in our lives. I need, I need to be the responsible one. I need to take care of. So a lot of should, supposed to, duty, responsibility. It's really hard to make a decision based on should and supposed to. And the reason for that is because it's so much about externals. It's about what other people expect, what other people think is good or right. And we're entrained to that from a really young age. I mean, I would have gone to school for fine art probably if my dad hadn't told me that I couldn't and that you can never make money as an artist and you really should study business. By the way, I wound up studying English, which didn't make him very happy either. But as a magazine editor, it was very helpful. So the tool that I recommend for my clients that they use a lot and that a lot of people tell me is really helpful is should. Whenever you should in a sentence, substitute the words really want to. And believe me, if you say, I should call my mother, and then you reframe it as, I really want to call my mother, you will know in an instant if that is true for you or not. I really want to go work at XYZ company. It's like, oh no, I really don't want to do that. Super, super helpful when you're feeling around into what's a yes or what's a no for you. The other thing that people tend to do a lot that makes makes decisions so much harder is what I call unanswerable questions. So I have this particular picture because it's really easy to understand this in terms of dating. I have a lot of single clients who will go on 3 or 4 dates. And then if it's a woman, she'll say to me, I really can't tell if he's the one. And I'm like, well, you've been on 3 or 4 dates with this guy. You probably don't have enough information. You don't really know him well enough to know if he's the one, but you do know him well enough to decide if you want to go on one more date. So a lot of times we're asking these giant questions that we just can't possibly know the answer to. There's a lot of moving parts in this universe, right? If I'm answering the question, is this the job that I'm going to work at for the rest of my career? And I've got 10 more years of career. It's really, really hard to answer that question. What if the company gets sold? What if, there's mergers? What if it gets spun off? What if a new CEO comes in and completely changes the direction? Like, you can't make the decision based on, you can't know what's going to happen 5 years from now, 7 years from now. Too many variables. So how can we ask questions when we're trying to make decisions that are answerable? How can we ask questions that are much more time sensitive and smaller increments? So for example, my beloved Paul trades stock on a weekly or daily basis, depending on what's going on. And when he's trading stock, he'll often feel into, do I want to sell this stock today? And sometimes he doesn't get a clear yes or no. So he'll ask, do I sell this stock now? And then he'll get a clear yes or no. Or do I sell the stock this afternoon? And then he can get a clear yes or no. So if you're asking yourself a question and you're not getting clear answers on it, try feeling into smaller increments. The thing about decision making and life choices in general is, well, allow me to give you permission to make your decisions in 10-second increments. The Access Consciousness folks recommend this, and 10 seconds might feel like too many decisions in a day, but you can make decisions in 5-minute increments. Do I want to do this now? I find this super duper helpful when I'm prioritizing what I'm going to do during the day. So I'll look at a list of things that need to be done and I'll see which one has some juice. And I'll do that for as long as it feels joyful or in the flow or even like I'm curious about it, like it's calling me forward. There's energy involved in it. And the minute it starts to feel hard and heavy and yuck, I'll just take a pause, see if it's that I'm hungry or angry or lonely or tired. HALT, I don't know if you've ever heard that acronym, but it's super helpful. So it might be that, or it might be that it's time to do something different. So, I have the course correcting airplane picture here because airplanes are course correcting the entire flight. If you're flying from New York to LA, it's not aimed at LA most of the time. They constantly have to adjust course. And it's the same thing with our life. You know, most of the time when I talk to people and they say, what's my purpose? What am I meant to do? You know, what is my ideal career? Very rarely do people get like their entire life journey shown to them in one vision. And in fact, I have one client who was shown her entire life journey in one vision, and it was debilitating. It was so big and so overwhelming, and it seemed so impossible to get to from where she was, that she shut down for years, literally, and did not even make any progress toward that. So I find that we tend to get our guidance in really small increments. And a lot of this is about tuning into our own guidance, whether you believe that that's your higher self or your future self, or your innate knowing, or God or angels. We all have access to this guidance in every decision that we're making all day long. So one other thing that my beloved reminds me on those days where I'm all wound up is to follow the joy. For some of you, it might not be joy, it might be peace or calm. It might be, you know, just feeling less stress, follow the relief, but follow the feeling that feels better than where you are. If it feels better than where you are moving in the right direction for you. Your guidance is spot on. It really has your best and highest good, your best interests at heart. So just feel your way forward one step at a time. And I promise you, life will feel better and better and better. So I want to thank you. Thank you so much for playing. Thank you for participating. I am happy to answer any questions. And I wanted to mention, I do have a special offer for all of you. So in the coaching that I do, the minimum that I offer is a package of 4 sessions. And for anybody from Platinum Resource Group who wants to buy a package of 4 sessions, you'll get a 5th session free. And the regular price for 4 sessions is $1,500, but because of the pandemic and everything going on the planet, I have been offering it on a sliding scale from $500 to $1,500 for the 4 sessions. You just tell me whatever number feels comfortable for you, and that's absolutely fine. So, and there's a link to schedule a free discovery session, and we'll make sure that you get that link afterwards. And let me stop sharing and see you guys and answer any questions you might have. I am happy to play.
Yes, anybody who has a question, just either put it in the chat or unmute themselves.
So I kind of get sort of the gist of like following your heart and really getting to the emotion. But what about if you find yourself second guessing or not trusting?
So that's a great question. So the second guessing is a really, really big thing. One of my favorite teachers, Abraham Hicks, they talk about make a decision and line up with it. So one of the things that really helps in that regard is to just give yourself permission to make that decision and stick with it for 5 minutes or 20 minutes or a day. And get some more data, start moving in that direction. And then once you start moving in that direction, if things feel a little off to you, course correct, right? You can change your mind. You have carte blanche to change your mind as many times as you want. Now, when you're accepting a job offer, that may feel really off, but I can tell you, I took a job at a company many years ago and I worked there for 2 weeks and I was so sure that it was the wrong place for me that I gave them 2 weeks notice. And it didn't hurt my career and the world didn't end. And we left on good terms and was still able to do some freelance work for them. So, you know, really honor yourself. Life is too short to force yourself to stay somewhere for a year just because you're supposed to.
Thanks.
What about when you need to make decisions with other people and you need to collaborate? Do these techniques work with that as well?
Absolutely. So it's a great conversation. Right? Imagine going in there and all sitting down together and going, okay, how does this feel to you? And you can try different things on the table. And it's like, ooh, that one felt really awful to me. That one felt really like, ooh, that lit me up. And it's kind of fun to see the physical expression in other people. So we may, you know, in a meeting, like you don't necessarily have to talk to people about this, right? You're sitting in a business meeting and you're talking about different choices you can make. And all of a sudden you notice it got really quiet and people kind of like the walls just went up. or everybody kind of did this, or all the arms got crossed. Like, you'll notice, as you notice people's body language and the way they feel and the energy in the room, sometimes you can feel the energy in the room getting bigger and it starts to feel like a party. And sometimes you can feel like all the air just got sucked out of the room. It's like, oh, well, that was a no, thank you.
Yeah, that's good.
So Sue, I looked on your website and even on LinkedIn, you talk about listening to your angels. How is that different than listening to, talk to me about the angels.
Thank you. I love that you asked that. So my experience of it is that the angels are one of the, you could say, mechanisms through which fate unfolds, the divine accomplishes things. They're with all of us all the time and helping us, but we're on a free will planet, so they can't do things in our space unless we ask for help or allow help. Now, if you lose your car keys, they're over by your keys going over here, over here, over here, over here. But I find that asking them for guidance, asking them for energy when I feel tired, asking them for assistance is super beneficial. It doesn't really matter if you believe in angels, you can call it anything you want. There are, some people think of it as source energy. To me, it's all connected to that life force energy, qi in the Asian tradition, or qi, the same thing that's used in Qigong. It's something that we're always connected to. We can't, if we're still alive, we're connected. What seems to get in the way of feeling that flow and feeling that, I call it feeling like the angels are rolling out the red carpet in front of me, when it's like green lights and parking spaces and the perfect person calls at the perfect time and I wind up sitting next to the president of Whole Foods. That's to me when I know I'm on my path. I know I'm tuning into the energy. I'm following my yes. When I feel all balled up or all stressed out, I know that all I have is resistance. It's not a huge big deal. And that resistance is what's so exhausting. So when I'm doing work that I ordinarily love, and at the end of the day, I'm completely worn out, I know that I've got a lot of resistance going in me. It's just like friction in our system. And it just means sometimes I've got that mind chatter, that second guessing myself thing going on. Sometimes it means that I've got the critical voices from childhood. I've got a little peanut gallery going on in there telling me that I'm not doing it fast enough, I'm not doing it well enough. And so it's always a clue. My physical exhaustion is a clue that I might have some inner work to do just to clean up so I can feel better and so I can do it better and so life can feel better. And so I wanted to mention this one thing. Some of us have been taught not to be selfish. And if you ever think back on that training when you were told that you were selfish, the funny thing about it is you were probably doing what you wanted to do instead of what that other person wanted you to do. So the person who tells you that you're selfish is actually being selfish because they want you to do what they want you to do. So ironic when you look at it from that perspective. So I am here to give you permission to be self first and self full, because we know when you're giving and giving and giving and not taking care of yourself, you run out of steam, you run out of patience, you get resentful, get angry. Nobody likes that. It's not good for anybody. So those of us who are really, really service oriented, it really is in service to take care of ourselves.
Okay, now when I think about what you've talked about and job search, so there are many people on the call who are in job search. How best to apply that, especially when you feel beaten down and you're just, you feel like you're running out of options. What is the best approach?
Thank you for asking. So many different places that you can apply it. So we'll start with the simplest one. You're looking at job postings and you're reading it. Just notice how you feel as you're reading it. Really simple. Does it feel life enhancing, or is it sucking the energy out of you just reading the description? You're looking at different companies that you might want to apply to. When you feel into their website, how does it feel? look at the pictures of the people who are the leaders on the team and notice how you respond. We have this incredible ability to respond to images of others and know if there's resonance or not. If you're trying to figure out what's next. So that's kind of the fun part. And I say that, those of you who are in the I don't know what's next space may not be feeling the fun of it yet, but I like to think of it as more of a treasure hunt. So what is it that I love doing? What did I love doing as a child? How can I tap into that energy again? How can I bring my curiosity superpower? So when we were 3 years old, I'm pretty sure that all of us had a favorite word, and it was why. Why? Why? And you just follow the why. You know, have you ever been with a toddler who's asking you, why is the sky blue? Why are there clouds? Why this? Why that? And they get to this point where you can't answer the questions anymore. And you're like, okay, let me Google all these things. Do that for yourself. Give yourself permission to follow the energy, follow what interests you, follow your curiosity. It's amazing when you start to just give yourself the time to go down those rabbit holes and see, okay, oh, I just found out that there's such a thing as a marine engineer. I had no idea there was a marine engineer. What does a marine engineer do? I'm going to watch a couple of videos about it. See, oh, well, I love this part of it. I didn't even know that that was a thing. Okay, I'm going to put that on my list of things that appeal to me. And start to connect. I call it a treasure hunt. It's like you're just gathering the gems and the nuggets along the way. And all of a sudden, it's like you're gathering pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, and you start to see what the puzzle might be. So they start to fit themselves together. And the other thing, and I'm sure you've heard from lots of people, but I'm going to reiterate it because it was the most valuable career search advice I ever received, was most jobs never get posted. So what you really want to do is follow that curiosity and ask people if they can give you 10 minutes of a conversation or 15 minutes, just to ask them a couple questions about what they do, what they love about it, what they don't like about it, how they got to be where they are. And then at the end of that 10 or 15 minutes, ask them if there's a couple more people you can talk to. And that's how I got almost every job I ever got that was a real job. Certainly my first job right out of college. In fact, they gave somebody an ultimatum that she had to take a 50% pay cut or leave. And that's how I got my first job, because I just followed that energy. I just asked people if they could spare a few minutes to talk to me.
Okay, another question. So along the lines of job search, what about preparing for the interview? We know, and we talk to so many people who have so much angst about preparing for the interview. Talk to us about that.
Okay, so one of the ways that you can use this to prepare for the interview is, again, tap into that curiosity. I look at the job and I'm interested in this part, so I want to know more about that. I'm interested in this company. Maybe I'm really concerned about some aspects of the company, right? Maybe environment is really important to me, and I'm wondering if these people are polluters. So I'm going to make my list of questions. I'm going to prepare to interview the other person. It starts to shift the power dynamic, and it also helps you get the job. People want to hire candidates who show that they've done the research and they're actually interested in the company, and they're thinking about how they fit into the company and the culture. So start to think about that too. What really matters to you? You know, I realize that some people who've been out of work for a long time may be feeling some desperation around getting a job. And we all know that that desperation energy doesn't really serve us very well. You know, if you think of it in terms of dating, who wants to be with that needy, clingy person who seems absolutely desperate to have a relationship, and they're like, okay, let's go steady after 5 minutes into the first date. Same thing with jobs. So whatever you can do to remind yourself that you're valuable, that you're a real contribution, that you've got this, right? So one of the, wouldn't it be wonderful? One of my favorite tools that I share with clients is a game that came from Abraham. It's called Wouldn't It Be Wonderful? So wouldn't it be wonderful if I had fun during this job interview? Wouldn't it be wonderful if it felt really easy? And you start to tell yourself this story. Wouldn't it be wonderful if I really connected with the interviewer? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had some similar interests? Wouldn't it be wonderful if I felt resonance? Wouldn't it be wonderful if they asked me great questions? Wouldn't it be wonderful if the answers, the perfect answers, just popped into my mind? Wouldn't it be wonderful if I felt really relaxed during the whole process? And wouldn't it be wonderful if I started to like get enthusiastic and even light up a little bit? Wouldn't it be wonderful if I could tune in and feel what's going on inside this interviewer? Wouldn't it be wonderful if I could sense when I was starting to lose them and I could course correct really easily? Wouldn't it be wonderful if I knew intuitively what they wanted to hear? And wouldn't it be wonderful if I could tell if I was a match or not for this role right away? So the Wouldn't It Be Wonderful game is great because it removes the resistance. I'm not saying I can do this or I am this. I'm saying wouldn't it be wonderful? So I get to just play with what feels good. And maybe I'll say a wouldn't be wonderful question that feels awful, right? Like, wouldn't it be wonderful if this was the perfect job for me? And I might feel like, how would I know that? Or that's not possible. The minute I feel that, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could tell if this was the next job for me? Wouldn't it be wonderful if I could tell if I was going to enjoy this job for the next 6 months? So shorter increments and just play with it, follow the feeling. I've probably said the word play 400 times during this. That's not a coincidence. Like, we tend to make everything so hard, so heavy, so much work, all this adulting stuff. Well, you know, we're all just big kids. We're all just big kids, and we're looking for a fun place to play where they're going to give us some money for playing with those other people. And the more we can allow it to feel lighter and less life or death, the more we're not in our amygdala. That life or death thing puts us into the reptile brain. It gets us out of higher thinking. It makes it hard to form a complete sentence. So whatever you can do, and literally if you feel yourself completely stressed out before a job interview, try doing this. It's a technique called havening, and it's super self-soothing, and it helps us get out of that reptile brain. The other thing that's super helpful is to close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths. You know, when you're in that trauma response, that stress, fight or flight or freeze response, you do not, if you close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths, it will reset your nervous system. When you're running from the saber-toothed tiger, you cannot close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths. So your body knows that you are actually safe, that it was a false alarm, and that you can relax.
That's neat. Okay, anybody else have questions? All right. Well, Sue, you coached somebody very near and dear to me, and that person found you just so incredibly helpful. And so thank you for that. And thank you for being here with us. And we want you to be back again. I think it'd be a really fun conversation to kind of explore even further on the whole feeling thing. And I love the wouldn't it be wonderful? Man, that's a key takeaway. Wouldn't it be wonderful?
It's so helpful. I used to use it. I was writing a book and I felt so much resistance. So I would go out in my garden and water my plants. Another great thing, right? Wherever you feel comfortable, and nature is very soothing. And I would play the wouldn't it be wonderful game, right? Like, wouldn't it be wonderful if people had been wanting this book? Wouldn't it be wonderful if all I had to do was answer all their questions? And wouldn't it be wonderful if it just flowed right out of me? Wouldn't it be wonderful?
Did you write that book?
I did. And every time I did the wouldn't it be wonderful game, I went inside and a chapter would come out practically intact. It would just flow out in an hour or 2. It was so easy to write that book because I used the wouldn't it be wonderful.
So what's the name of the book, and did you publish it?
So the publisher may or may not have published it. It was on contract. It was called Making It as a Freelance Writer.
Okay.
So this was years ago, and I'm not sure that it's still in print, but
okay.
But
fun.
This works so well. So helpful for any kind of thing, whether you're going on a first date or a job interview, it works.
Well, thank you, Sue, so much for being with us. And we'll send out the recording and the offer to everyone. And